Hi, welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. When people tell me that something or other is a grand conspiracy, a worldwide conspiracy, um, I often warn them never to underestimate the combination of greed on the part of a few with stupidity on the part of the many. And yet, I suppose that could be considered a conspiracy, right? Um, I had a big stack of stuff. By the way, I should welcome everyone, all of you, and especially the new people, the new subscribers. We continue to grow. That's great. Thank you very much. We're growing both here and on Patreon. I'll say something about Patreon in just a moment, but welcome to you all. We passed 1,000 subscribers. That was a big thing last week, and we appreciate it. And we ask that you hit the like thing, the thumbs up, that you subscribe, that you share it with your friends, as many as you can. And I think you're really going to want to share this one today. I had a big stack of stuff ready to go. The weekend I spent editing the book, and so I didn't put out too much on YouTube. But I have a big stack of stuff ready to go. Some interesting, some important, and some of it just so silly you can't believe it. But something made me realize that what I'm going to cover today was far more important because it's important that more of this gets out to more people, all of the things that are going on. To let you in, and what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be reading a list from a book called The Naked Communist. This was written by Cleon Skousen back in the 50s. I forget exactly what year it was written. I don't know if it says on here somewhere, but it doesn't matter. The Naked Communist. I'm going to be reading the list of the Communist Party of America's goals for America, which was put down at their conference, I believe, in the 50s. Anyway, and I think you're going to be amazed at what you hear. And some of you may be familiar with this. Now, before I get into that, I've put over on the Patreon channel, and this is the difference for those of you who are new to us. The difference between the YouTube channel and the Patreon channel is everything that we put on the YouTube channel, we also put on Patreon, but we put a lot of extra stuff over there too. Some of it entertaining, most of it is just real educational that you should know. It's going to enlighten you so much more. And what I put over there today was a fascinating documentary. It comes from the Reagan Library, and it is The Truth About Communism. Much of it is narrated by communist officials themselves. There's a short introduction by the man who was he was the leader of the provisional government between the fall of the Shah and the rise of the Communist Party in Russia. It's fascinating, and it's something that I would suggest everybody watch and send to all of their friends. This is the battle we're in. We are misled sometimes to think that there are all of these individual battles, but it's all under this umbrella. And in a minute, as I start reading these, I think you'll see why. In the 50s and 60s, we were all told to look askance at such organizations as the John Birch Society and other anti-communist organizations. McCarthy was held up as just to be a psycho. The definition of xenophobia and such, and to be called a McCarthyite is still quite an insult. Most people don't even know the truth of that situation. Anyway, I'm going to begin with the chapter. It's going to kind of introduce what we're going to be talking about. It's talking about the importance of the psychological war. This is something that our enemies have known about for a long time. Some people on our side do, but most people on our side don't and don't care. And the leaders of our country, well, I'll tell you what, I'll hold off and let you reach your own decision on that. Okay, again, I'm going to be reading from The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. And I suggest you all get a copy of this book too and read it and share it with your friends. Okay, the importance of the psychological war. He starts. The biggest mistake of the West has been allowing itself to drift into a state of mental stagnation, apathy, and inaction. Isn't that the truth? In some circles, motivations of patriotism, loyalty, and the traditional dream of so-called freedom for all men have been lying dormant or have been paralyzed by a new kind of strange thinking. Authorities say there is an urgent need for a revolutionary change in our state of mind. What is wrong with our state of mind? First and foremost, we have been thinking the way the communists want us to think. You'll see. Our founding fathers would have been alarmed to learn how confused many of our people have become over such fundamental problems as coexistence, disarmament, free trade, the United Nations, recognition of Red China, and a host of related problems. Instead of maintaining a state of intellectual vigilance, we have taken communist slogans as the major premise for far too many of our conclusions. Let us go down a list of current strategy goals which the communists and their fellow travelers are seeking to achieve. These are all part of the campaign to soften America for the final takeover. It should be kept in mind that many loyal Americans are working for these same objectives because they are not aware that these objectives are designed to destroy us. Okay. The communist goals as set down by the Communist Party of America in the 1950s. Number 1, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Number 2, now some of you younger people may not understand exactly, but you will, and you'll understand some of the later ones perfectly. And that is the acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Well, that was back when the United States had supreme superiority in atomic weapons. And so, of course, the communist parties wanted us to accept coexistence. They couldn't have stood up against us in a war at that time. They can now because we adopted a policy of coexistence as they wanted us to. Number 2, U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. That's right, again. What that means is that they wanted our people to say, well, we'll give up this, we'll give up that, we'll give up this, we'll give up that, because we don't want to go to war. Well, at that time, an atomic war would have lasted about 3 seconds with us winning. But they were smart, and our people were weak and ignorant, and so they gave things up because they didn't want to go to war. Number 3, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. You don't know how many people actually believed and pushed for that. Now, many people don't because not as many people go to church as they used to, but we used to have many, many churches that would push for this unilateral disarmament. And saying, if we just gave, the only reason that Russia has their weapons because they're scared of us. We need to give them up. No, well, this was a communist plot and goal and policy to try to get us to that position. Number 4, permit free trade between all nations, regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. This goes to the old dual use. Or keeping the United States from having restrictive policies against Soviet satellite countries, or in other situations, CHICOM, Chinese Communist in Southeast Asia. 5, extension of long-term loans to Soviet or Russia and Soviet satellites. Loans, Sure, we gave them loans long term. Essentially, we financed their war against us. And it's a war that they have been winning, as you'll see more of in a minute. 6, provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. We did that for years. I don't know if you all, some of you older people will remember all the newsreels when we'd go and we would see plane loads of supplies from given to America, foreign aid, wheat, corn, everything, and they'd be offloaded into these Soviet satellite countries with big stickers on the side that says, gift from the people of America, whatever. Well, that made our people feel good as if we were doing something, but what they didn't realize that so much of the foreign aid was going to strengthen our adversaries, actually to strengthen those who were working for our downfall. The American mind is, at least used to be, basically a good but naive mind, and other people have taken advantage of it. 7, grant recognition of Red China. Yeah, that's right. And admission of Red China to the UN. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Red China, what does that mean? Well, for you younger people, that means Communist China as opposed to Taiwan. Number 8, set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the Germany question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Well, East and West Germany were separate states for a great long time until they were brought down by a coalition of Reagan and the Pope and Margaret Thatcher. The wall came down during Bush, but Bush didn't do it. Okay, number 9, prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the U.S. has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. That's because our leaders are stupid and because the American people are naive. So we agreed, we said, as long as we're in talks, we won't involve ourselves in atomic tests. We won't improve our arsenal. Of course, they did, but they wanted to get us to agree to it. Number 10, allow all Soviet satellites individual representatives in the UN. Number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. You know how many Americans believe that now? They didn't used to. I'll tell you a story. It was back in the 60s. We were visiting one of my aunts in Lubbock, Texas. And we went to church, and then we went down to a diner afterwards. And we sat there, and it was one of those kind of places. I don't know if I haven't seen this kind of thing for years, but they would have paper placemats on the table. And we sat down, and I noticed they had flags of the world all the way around. And all of a sudden, my aunt, who had been an officer, and she had the demeanor of either Navy or Marines, I forget, during World War II, I don't recall. I think it was Marines, but I'm not sure. All of a sudden, she stood up, bolt upright, stood up and says, "We are leaving." And boy, being the guests, and her sisters were there, and they got up. And we stood up being the guests, and out we went. And when we found out later, it's because she looked down and she saw that the flag of the United Nations was on that placemat. And she was ahead of her time. She understood what was coming. So again, number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one world government. Where have we heard that? A one world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe that the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow. I believe so too. Sometimes these two centers compete with each other, as they are now doing in the Congo. The United Nations is never going to be a pro-American organization. Just look at the members of their different councils. Number 12, resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. There were attempts to outlaw the Communist Party. And boy, they were met with all the lefties raising up just like they would nowadays. Number 13, do away with all loyalty oaths. 14. That was because, I'll get into that just a little bit, there were some areas that would require people to take a loyalty oath to the United States if they thought, in order to stop communist subversion. 14. Continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. 15. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Well, I think they got one, and they got about half of the other one. 16. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. 17. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. Remember, this isn't me talking. These are the written goals of the Communist Party of America. 18. Gain control of all student newspapers. You read a student newspaper? 19. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. 20. Did I read that? Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. I'm not sure. I think they might have misstated that. 20. 20. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions. Yeah. Infiltrate the press? CNN, anybody? MSNBC? Certain social media platforms? 21. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. 22. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to, quote, eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substituting shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Have you seen some of the trash out there in public that they call art now? See how we're doing on time. I need to read more quickly. Number 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. They say our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Well, they've accomplished that. 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. Well, they've switched that around because now they censor free speech and don't call it censorship. 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. One of the things that was in the stack I was going to read today is about some idiot, I don't remember if he was a journalist or a college professor, who implied that there was nothing wrong with being sexually attracted to, or maybe even being involved in, I forget, a 1-year-old. Let's read that again. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. 27. Here we go. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with quote, social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. 28. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state, which there is no separation of church and state constitutionally. We all know that came out of a letter from Jefferson to the Baptist Church in Danbury, Connecticut. We'll talk about that more another time. 29, discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Number 30, discredit the American Founding Fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. 31, belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the, quote, big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Number 32, support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. Number 33, eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. Number 34, eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. That's what many people mistakenly think that McCarthy was involved in. That was a major committee investigating communist intrusion into the world. It was the Committee on Un-American Activities. McCarthy wasn't in it. That was a House committee, and he was a senator. See how we're doing on time. Okay, excuse me. I been talking too much. Okay. 35. Discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. Well, I don't know whether they did it, but the FBI has done a fine job doing it themselves, haven't they? But now I think actually instead of dismantling it, they are using it. 36. Infiltrate, and you know that's not a slam on some of the good agents out there. I've known some good agents. As an organization, though, it's got big problems. 36. Infiltrate and gain control of more unions. 37. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. Well, look at the businesses now. You see our major business. It used to be U.S. Steel and things like that. Well, our businesses now are the tech companies, right? You see how they're all in bed with communist China? Okay, I'll read that again. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. 38. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. Ritalin, anyone? Okay. You know how many people we have on psychiatric drugs now? 39. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. Well, not just that, but how about the red flag laws over guns? 40. Discredit the family as an institution. Who else did that? BLM? That was one of their stated goals, right? Discredit the family. We are here to destroy the nuclear family. That was one of their precepts. So again, discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Number 41. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. It takes a village, right, Hillary? But not parents. 42. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of American tradition. Yeah, the riots of 2020, right? That students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, and social problems. 43. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. Well, that's referring to much of what happened in Africa. Africa had a lot of colonial governments. Had they been able to go through a process to to prepare and enable and provide infrastructure to the native populations, things might have gone more smoothly. But this was one of the things: to overthrow the colonial governments before the native populations are ready for self-government. And Africa, or much of Africa, has been a mess ever since because of that. 44, internationalize the Panama Canal. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. And 45, repeal the Connolly Reservation to the U.S. so the U.S. cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Give the World Court jurisdiction over nations and individuals alike. Now, some of those probably reached out and grabbed you by the throat. How are we doing? Okay, I got a couple minutes. Probably reached out and grabbed you by the throat right away. Others kind of take a minute for you to think about and say, okay, have I seen that? What's the result of that? And then that'll come out and grab you by the throat. This is our major problem. This is the umbrella over all of these smaller problems that we think we're dealing with. And then, of course, over that is simply the problem of evil in the world. We don't fight against physical enemies. It's a spiritual battle first, but it's this battle next, and this is what organizes all the rest. It's a shame that so much of our country, so many of our citizens, have been fooled into believing and actually supporting the efforts of the Communist Party worldwide and in the United States. Most of them don't even realize they're doing it. They think that they're just being nice folks because these messages sound nice. In the future, I'll be reading more out of this, and it will sound scary. These were just the goals set out. You don't make goals sound scary, but they're scary if you understand them. So I'll leave that with you today. I hope that you've listened to all of these. I hope you will think about all of these. I hope that you'll share this with as many people as you possibly can. And like I said, I put that special documentary over on the Patreon channel. I always put the link to the Patreon channel down here. It's another way you can support this channel, and we appreciate that. It's so nice to see how it's growing over there. But if you would like to support us, please join us on Patreon, and you'll get a lot out of it. I'll guarantee you that. And the more that we have your support, the more we're going to be able to do about this and reach out to as many people as we can. So thank you very much. I'll leave you with that. Remember what we always say, and that is America needs a reversion, a return to the way things should be, and it needs you to be a part of it. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.